Hi, everyone. My name is James Tian with Ikan, and we are here at NAB 2026. We're doing this fireside chat format podcast, and we have with us today Jesse Miller, CEO of Midtown Video. How are you doing, Jesse?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Love to be at NAB. Love to be at the Ikan booth. Very, very forward-thinking booth. Always something new here that is going to be impactful in the industry.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we were pretty excited about the concept of this booth. We'll have B-rolls for the audience to see, but I think we're the only exhibitor here that built, instead of a traditional pipe and grid kind of studio environment, we built a drop ceiling environment. And so what you're seeing above us is a series of drop ceilings tiles with our PoE lights, integrated in the ceiling. And we really believe that the convergence of broadcast into the corporate AV sector is here to stay, and that growth is only going to increase. So we're really excited about the opportunity.
At Midtown, we build a lot of pipe and grid, lighting grids for our studio clients. So we don't want to see that business go away.
No, not at all.
So it's not really a cannibalization. What Ican's PoE lights have done for us is now we don't necessarily have to build it. Now we've got the option to hang them from the ceiling grid. That's interesting that you say that. I think you are the only drop ceiling tile grid lighting scenario booth here. Very wise, I think.
Well, thank you so much.
It tells an important story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse, tell the audience a little bit about Midtown Video. What do you guys do?
Midtown Video is a boutique broadcast and audio video integrator. So we build television and streaming production studios. We build conferencing systems for our clients and presentation systems in auditoriums. We also specialize in venue sound systems and video walls. Sports production sort of ties all of those together, or, morning announcements scenarios for high schools, houses of worship are putting in impressive audio video installations. So those are some of our core customers and core competencies.
That's great. 2026, right? Things are changing fast. What are your customers across all these different verticals? What are they looking for? And perhaps it's not a unified theme. Maybe it's just per segment. Like what are you seeing from your customers?
That's a great question. Definitely in all segments, the taste is refined. The kinds of production values they want to incorporate into their video marketing is, increasingly more sophisticated, impressive, engaging.
Mm-hmm.
So where we are a design engineering focused company, so much of the innovation is really driven by what the customers are asking for. We want to create this. We want it multi-purpose so that we could accomplish these 3 use cases. This is a very challenging space. We don't even have room for a control room. What can you do for us? And so more than ever, we're able to say yes to what they're asking for and come up with innovative ways to implement their designs, their imagination. So the taste of the customer is, I can't think of the word for it, but exponentially increasing.
They're getting more sophisticated, right? They're requiring more. Yeah,
exactly that.
Yeah, they want to do more in-house than before.
Yeah.
Is that where you see the greatest growth opportunity in being that advocate, be able to say yes more often than no with newer technologies, newer workflows, perhaps related to IP or AI?
Yes, definitely. Organizations don't want to necessarily have to hire a third party to bring it in.
Yeah.
I mean, whether that's for a live event, whether they bring in a DJ with speakers, or can't we just use the AV system, that you guys built in our ballroom, and in content creation, do we have to hire an independent marketing team, or can we use, our auditorium and our control room to create our in-house content and our executive messaging to the employees and, even external facing marketing content.
Jesse, you have always been that person, creative, forward thinking. You're always thinking on behalf of the customer, right? Like not just what they think they're telling you they need, but truly what they need, because you see not just one customer and their needs, but you talk to many customers, right? You're able to extrapolate based on a large set of interactions and data on how to help your customers. With that kind of amount of just real-time information, Where do you see the next couple of years? Where do you see all this? Where do you see all this going? Or what are
Well,
some things that you're seeing will happen?
one interesting aspect is kind of like a sunset of the traditional broadcast engineer.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
that talent, that profile that kept the call letter stations running, and the OB vans maintained.
yeah,
You don't get a lot of 22-year-old youngsters, that know how to register the tubes on an analog camera,
yeah.
just the nature of the beast. And so the digital native content producers, um, it's not exactly a broadcast engineer, but it's a video engineer. Those are the folks, that the marketing team is relying on to build their in-house video content production capabilities. So in addition to providing sophisticated systems, there's a lot of collaboration, from the studio designer side, understanding the end user workflow, and then creating a set of presets, the Elgato Stream Deck of operating the system. We've got to really understand what they want to do and then what kind of talent they have to operate it. Because you can't necessarily rely on the traditional characters that you might have relied on to operate it. So there's this secondary layer of the user interface. As we mentioned, the tastes are becoming more sophisticated. They know they need that high-end camera, but who's going to dial it in? We count on autofocus. We count on the robots, maybe even for auto tracking, right? So now it's incumbent on the studio designer to make sure that there's like vibe coding almost for the operation of their multi-camera, multi-channel audio, RGB, LED lighting. Like, how are they going to squeeze the most value out of that system without staffing, a bunch of traditional broadcast video engineers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing when I talk to corporate decision makers versus traditional television, there is a dynamic that, in traditional television, what goes into a studio operation directly impacts the revenue, which is the advertising space. Whereas for many companies, marketing is rarely a direct revenue stream. It's more often a cost center that has a longer term kind of turn, right? You're ideally trying to create a platform, build demand, perhaps capture MQLs or marketing qualified leads that would then get past the sales. So sales qualified leads. So that kind of that ROI stretches further out, right? And so I can see exactly what you're saying. I mean, most corporations don't want to invest in marketing the way traditional television would invest in a studio. It's
Brand awareness isn't enough. They need a return on investment.
Exactly.
They need a conversion. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever have those conversations with your clients, or do your clients ever, or is that already like once that did like by the time your clients talk to you, has that decision already been made, or do you ever get engaged with that kind of discussion?
Often the decisions are already made,
Mm-hmm.
and even in the unlikeliest of places, even in their conference room design, we get an opportunity to say, we looked at your organization. We know that a big win for you would be this. How can the implementation of your technology further your business goals? Even in the conference room design or in the television studio design, it's like I use the metaphor of vibe coding, but it's like this second layer benefits that you can offer your clients. We're going to have lots of small spaces rather than one giant space, or we're going to have several stages running at the same time. So we want, one centralized control room where you can operate all the events throughout the building rather than each event venue having its own control room. So yeah, it's that secondary sort of, how can we live out the mission of your business through your technology design?
We in this series of conversation, we talked about traditional television, we talked about corporate clients and their needs, as well as hospitals, right? You did that great it was a great video case study with Methodist Health, right? And
Baptist Health.
Baptist Health. And I mean do you see like hospitals as an extension of a corporate client and their needs? You see a similar
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the heroes of the hospital groups are the physicians, are the surgeons and the nurses. And, people love hero stories. So those organizations are sitting on a gold mine. If they can arrange for the time of, an otherwise pretty busy surgeon to recount a life-saving moment, they can use that and communicate their mission to the end users and maybe even recruit additional clients. And so for 2026 specifically, right, with the inclusion or the growth of things like NDI and SRT and remote capabilities, these organizations that are making asks of the time of their heroes, Baptist Health is spread out all over South Florida. You can't get a Boca Raton doctor into your Miami studio unless you're causing serious, interruptions. So their strategy is the centralized control room with sort of remote studios with lots of capability that don't even need to be staffed by the talented, right? They can, with the long arm of remote production, allow that Boca doctor to hit their Boca remote studio space and be incorporated into their Miami-based central control room.
I love that. I mean, what you're referring to, I think the industry is getting around a term called REMI, right? Right. And then that's really just trying to create some sort of best practices around remote production that started, I think COVID was probably it wasn't the genesis, but it
was a big accelerator.
Exactly, right? You couldn't bring people safely to places, so now equipment has to be shipped over, and then that makes a lot of sense. So let's just jump to topics of remote production and REMI. You talked about NDI. What are other kind of critical kind of workflows or components or infrastructure technology that would make that viable and successful?
Something I've got my eye on is Zoom's introduction of all of their new NDI capabilities. Treating every Zoom attendee as their own NDI source. Teams has been doing that for a while. And giving tools, professional audiovisual technicians, the tools to really create engaging hybrid meetings. And this theme keeps recurring of having one centralized control room, many remote contribution studios, and the inclusion of simple tools that people are already using. How can I just join via Zoom, or how can I get my, multi-camera setup for my auditorium into the WebEx meeting so that the end users that aren't in the auditorium can see it? As you mentioned, COVID definitely accelerated that. And still 6 years later, we're seeing big advancements and a lot of focus on developing that area because we're trying to stretch these investment dollars further. We're trying to see the ROI earlier. Used to be, one camera would cost $60,000. Now we're building entire podcast studios for $60,000.
That's incredible. What I'm hearing also from you, Jesse, is that remote production, I mean, when I think of remote production in its traditional sense, it's like getting a set of equipment remotely in front of a small group of people for like either an interview or a podcast kind of format like this, right? But what you've added on top is this idea that remote production, REMI, applies to town hall meetings, live corporate events, and even like meetings, right? Like when you're meetings between different groups internally in different locations, or meetings between the marketing and sales wing of a company and their clients, right? So, right, all that it sounds like you're seeing a lot of more applications than a traditional REMI workflow as it pertains to like an interview, a documentary, that kind of format. Am I?
Whenever the talent and the cameras are geographically distant from the switcher,
Yeah,
it's remote production.
production.
It's definitely sports is a main driver of that.
Okay.
Having all the sports venues sending their signals back to Bristol so that ESPN is giving you, massive breadth in coverage at the same time. There are other drivers as well. I mean, we don't necessarily see all of the corporate production going on. And as you mentioned, town hall meetings, the viewer is remote. The viewer might be in the auditorium. The contributors are remote. They might be in the auditorium. And we've got all these different methods of bringing them in. It takes a talented sort of network-focused video team to survive and grow in today's environment for corporate video.
Yeah, that's so cool, Jesse. I mean, I'll since this is part of the Ikan podcast, I'll add a plug. I'll shamelessly add a plug. We're about to go live with our studio Rover, right?
Rover.
Yes, and And that's really designed with remote production in mind, right? The idea that you have a mobile RU rack unit on really high quality wheels. It's a unit built by our partners, Bigfoot Mobile. So really high quality stuff. And then we have a motorized pedestal system with a teleprompter, a PTZ camera, lighting on top, right? It's got a flight pack idea, so it's got a clamshell. Do you see that as an opportunity for you and some of your clients?
I think an easy to deploy sort of all-in-one kit is very useful. The like the Android-based meeting tools, the Neat bars and the Logitech Rally bars, they make all-in-one interactive touch boards. So you could take a Zoom room, put it on a cart, and wheel it around to whatever room in the corporate campus needs a meeting at that time. I think the Rover serves a really cool, analogous need there. Hey, what executive needs to do a hit to Bloomberg today? Or, who needs to attend remotely to our town hall meeting but can't make the travel? Dispatch a Rover, pack it up into a flight kit, roll it into their, home office or whatever, reduced number of buttons to get it on and streaming. There's a need.
So cool. Where else do you see kind of, are your clients asking about virtual production? We already talked about automation. Is there a conversation with your clients about AI augmentation to kind of be, agentic AI, right? It's becoming a term that more and more companies are embracing, some sort of not just AI in the sense of like a quick return on a prompt, right? But more somebody that is aware of the environment, is directly interfacing with equipment and software. Are you getting any of that from your clients, or is that just a little too too abstract at this point?
I'll tell you, from my clients, and from my friends, I'm sensing a lot of tension. People are apprehensive about what their normal roles might be absorbed by AI. And so we are all frantically trying to get our heads around AI and how to be the better prompters, the users of effective tools and workflows, so that, naturally, if a camera can follow a baseball, how much longer are we going to... not that I'm a proponent, but people are apprehensive. How can we make AI work for us and not end up enslaved to the robots in a real nightmare scenario? That said, I am a big fan of using artificial intelligence. I use it for leadership coaching. I use it to rehearse, to do some visualization of strategic initiatives. And definitely it's recording all of my meetings and informing me where I need to follow up, what steps I need to take. In production, it's sort of less sinister, right? We want AI to recall our lighting scenes and track the presenter. That's not necessarily a skilled veteran of sports video that can follow a golf ball, on an 80x box lens. I think there's a large gap before AI takes over that arena. And so in the production studio, we're looking for AI to reduce setup time, write a draft for us that we can edit, things like this.
Yeah, the way I look at it, and the way I hope people can understand, is that AI is sort of it's a kind of a building block, right? You start with traditional baseband that went into IP, and now with IP you have a lot of efficiencies, right? You have a lot of scalability efficiencies, and you go from that to like automation, because IP and software are just that they're interlinked, right? And so to me, like when I think about how AI can benefit production, it's really about taking automation to the next level. It's really about situation awareness automation versus rigid preset automation. And that's, you're right. AI has it's a double-edged sword.
I think the perfect example is I would like agentic teleprompter operator to roll the script in cadence as I'm speaking it. That would be a great development.
Yeah. Well said. The other thing I think,
not that I use a script or a teleprompter, but for my clients who do.
Yeah. Jesse, you mentioned you were the first person that used AI note taking when we were doing Zoom calls like 2 years ago. You started doing it, and I was like, "Oh, that's actually a great idea," because now I don't have to like pen and paper. Like, "Oh, I hope I remember what Jesse just told me." Now it's all being captured. It's such a It's a tool.
Captured in a searchable database. That's the other thing. It's one thing to create mountains of data, but what are you using it for? Is it creating a realistic to-do list? And then are you going back and reading the transcript, correcting the words that it got wrong, re-identifying, oh, you did a great to-do list, except you missed this thing that really I do need to follow up on. So the AI says, oh, that's great, Jesse. When you have another meeting, I'll be sure to be paying attention to that. They're language learning models, right? So that's very exciting to be able to train your AI and get it right. I love to use Siri, and people are like, I can never get my Siri to listen to me. How do you get it to listen to you? And it's, you work at it. You iterate.
Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe one last question. Thank you so much for all your time. Virtual production. How it was such a buzz 2-3 years ago. I'm sure it still is. Where's virtual production today? And yeah,
really important question. Certainly at the studio level, The Mandalorian, Hollywood films, virtual production's a reality. And the guys like Christie and Barco and the LED wall manufacturers, Absent, are building for it. Some of my clients are that level, but where I'm really focused is AR. So if I can just get a 3D graphic in the space in front of me, somebody's logo, and make it rotate around, create that really wow effect, that's enough for me. I don't necessarily have a jib with tracking information on, 7 different axes of where the camera is. But I do plenty of 1 and 2 camera shoots where I'd love for the weather, if it's raining, I'd love to see some raindrops pooling on the floor. And so, dipping your toe into virtual production with AR graphics, for me, that's the next step. It's digestible. You're not biting off more than you can chew, but you're really leveling up the production value. So to make a short story long, for me, the next step in virtual production is just adopting AR graphics. Once we get a taste for that, we're using camera tracking, we're getting all the fundamentals right, then we can make a larger than life backdrop, react in real time, bring in the jibs, full 3-dimensional camera tracking with zoom and focus and all that other stuff. But that could be overwhelming. I said to one of the vendors of virtual production software, there's Zero Density and there's Brainstorm and there's Chimera. Anyway, I was at a training and they said, does anybody have any questions? And I raised my hand and I'm like, look, you've done a great job convincing me that this can do anything. But I don't need something that can do anything. I need something that does one thing fantastic. So let's dip our toe in. Let's figure that fantastic thing out. For me, that's AR graphics that you can walk around. And once we get that exactly right, we've got all the tools in place to expand to virtual production in general. You know what I mean?
That is very wise and very insightful. I really appreciate that.
I'm flattered.
Give the clients what they need, right? Don't overcomplicate things. And I imagine as you're saying to that vendor, you're also saying make the UI simple, make that learning curve, not this, but like very, very shallow.
That's right. The harder they work on engineering and not saying, well, it can do anything, the harder they make it work on saying, this is how you do the 3 cool things that you're supposed to do. It's like the more pre-production you put into the show, the smoother it's going to go during production. The more we train our clients, the fewer support calls we're going to end up with. Like 1 ounce of preparation is better than a pound of cure. It's really fundamental elements to success. Yeah.
Well said. So well said. Jesse, it's been such a pleasure
Thank you.
Talking with you today. Really enjoyed our breakfast this morning as well. I hope you have a great show and hope you find find what you're looking for.
Thanks a lot, James. I love being invited to the Ikan booth and being able to sit down with you and have these discussions.
Thank you.